The story of the Ottoman Empire's collapse is one of grandeur, ambition, and tragic mistakes. For over 6 centuries, this empire had spanned continents, ruled diverse peoples, and carved a legacy that would echo through the centuries. From the bustling streets of Constantinople to the deserts of Arabia, the empire's influence was undeniable. Yet, despite its might, the Ottoman Empire crumbled, not overnight, but slowly, like a great cathedral whose foundations had been silently undermined for decades. To understand why it fell, we must begin in the late 17th century, when the empire was still a formidable power. Sultan Mehmed IV had just reigned through a period of military campaigns and political maneuvering. On the surface, the Ottomans were a beacon of stability in a volatile world. Their armies were feared, their bureaucracy admired, and their culture revered. But beneath this facade lay systemic problems that no conquest or alliance could mask. The first of these hidden mistakes was the empire's over-reliance on military expansion as a solution to internal issues. The Ottomans had long depended on a system that rewarded conquest, feeding the treasury with new territories. This expansionist model, while spectacular, was unsustainable. By the 18th century, the empire's borders had extended so far that administration became unwieldy. Governors in distant provinces began acting autonomously, often ignoring the sultan's directives. Corruption seeped into the bureaucracy, with local officials siphoning taxes while central oversight weakened. The very system that had built the empire was now contributing to its decline. Economic mismanagement compounded the problem. The empire relied heavily on economic revenues from agricultural lands and the spoils of war. Yet, as European powers began to dominate global trade, Ottoman commerce stagnated. The discovery of new trade routes to the Americas and Asia bypassed the traditional Ottoman-controlled paths. Silk, spices, and other luxury goods that had once flowed through Istanbul were now arriving in European ports without passing through Ottoman hands. The empire, once at the center of global trade, became a peripheral actor. Meanwhile, European nations, fueled by industrialization and mercantilism, were rapidly outpacing Ottoman economic power. The Ottoman military, once feared across continents, was another silent victim of stagnation. The Janissary Corps, elite soldiers who had once been the backbone of Ottoman conquest, had grown complacent and resistant to reform. By the 18th century, they had become a political force unto themselves, often interfering in succession disputes and state decisions. Their once fearsome discipline was replaced by inertia, and the army increasingly relied on outdated tactics and weaponry. This decline would have catastrophic consequences in battles against the rising powers of Europe. Yet perhaps the most devastating mistake was the empire's failure to modernize its institutions in a rapidly changing world. While Europe experienced the Enlightenment, scientific advancements, and the Industrial Revolution, the Ottoman state clung to traditional systems of governance. Attempts at reform were often half-hearted or blocked by entrenched elites who feared losing power. The Tanzimat reforms of the 19th century, though ambitious, came too late and faced resistance from both conservatives and provincial rulers. Bureaucratic inefficiency, coupled with social unrest, created a volatile environment that the central government struggled to control. Religious and ethnic tensions further eroded the cohesion of the empire. The Ottoman strategy had long been to rule diverse populations through a millet system, granting religious communities a degree of autonomy. For centuries, this system maintained relative peace among Turks, Arabs, Greeks, Armenians, and Jews. But as nationalist movements swept across Europe in the 19th century, similar sentiments began to emerge within Ottoman lands. Ethnic minorities increasingly sought independence, while the central authority lacked the means or the political will to suppress these movements without igniting further unrest. Revolts in the Balkans and the Arab provinces became increasingly common, stretching the empire's military and administrative resources thin. Foreign intervention accelerated the collapse. European powers, sensing Ottoman weakness, began manipulating internal divisions to their advantage. Britain, France, and Russia played complex games of diplomacy, often supporting nationalist uprisings or carving spheres of influence in Ottoman territories. The empire's inability to resist these pressures exposed a vulnerability that had long been hidden. Despite its size and history, the Ottomans could no longer defend their sovereignty effectively against modern imperial powers. The Crimean War, the Russo-Turkish Wars, and the eventual partitioning of Ottoman lands in the 19th and early 20th centuries were the inevitable consequences of these geopolitical pressures. Cultural stagnation also played a subtle yet profound role. While European societies were rapidly innovating in art, science, and philosophy, Ottoman culture became increasingly insular. The court and elite circles were still vibrant, but education for the broader population remained limited. Intellectual and scientific exchange lagged behind Europe, creating a gap in technological and administrative knowledge. This cultural lag undermined efforts to reform the military and bureaucracy, leaving the empire unable to compete effectively on the global stage. The leadership itself was often trapped in cycles of nepotism and intrigue. Sultans, isolated within the Topkapi palace, were frequently influenced by powerful advisors, harem politics, and palace factions. Decision-making became reactive rather than strategic. Ambitious provincial governors exploited these weaknesses, sometimes acting with near-total autonomy, while sultans oscillated between reform attempts and retrenchment. Every leadership misstep compounded the empire's vulnerabilities, creating a web of inefficiency that would prove fatal in times of crisis. By the early 20th century, the empire was widely recognized as the sick man of Europe, a phrase that captured the precariousness of its situation. Its military was outdated, its economy dependent on foreign loans, and its territories beset by nationalist movements. Yet the Ottoman Empire still had pockets of strength, and many contemporaries underestimated the inevitability of its collapse. The First World War, however, would deliver the final blow. The empire's decision to ally with Germany, hoping to regain lost prestige and territory, backfired catastrophically. By 1922, the Sultanate was abolished, and the remnants of the empire were carved into new nation-states under European supervision. In retrospect, the collapse of the Ottoman Empire was not caused by a single event or failure. It was the accumulation of hidden mistakes, over-reliance on conquest, economic stagnation, military complacency, resistance to reform, cultural lag, leadership missteps, and the pressures of emerging nationalist movements. Each factor alone might have been manageable, but together they created an irreversible chain reaction. What had once been a global superpower crumbled quietly, leaving a legacy both magnificent and tragic. And yet, the Ottoman Empire's story is not merely one of failure. Its cultural, architectural, and legal contributions continue to influence modern societies. From the majestic mosques of Istanbul to the legal frameworks that inspired Middle Eastern states, the empire's shadow endures. Understanding its collapse offers more than historical insight. It provides a cautionary tale about the fragility of power, the dangers of complacency, and the inevitability of change in a dynamic world. The empire's hidden mistakes remind us that even the mightiest civilizations can falter when internal decay meets external pressure. The Ottoman Empire fell, not because it lacked strength, but because it failed to adapt. In the echoes of its collapse, we find lessons about leadership, foresight, and the delicate balance required to sustain power over centuries. The rise and fall of the Ottoman Empire is ultimately a story about humanity itself. Ambitious, brilliant, flawed, and profoundly mortal.